All right, folks, here we are, Game Week 208 coming up. We're still in this international break, so it's not a lot of kind of previous data to look at that'll apply to this coming weekend. I'd say more than anything, I mean, just anywhere you can squeeze in a lineup, just go for it. The numbers are smaller, the payouts are smaller. Champion America is kind of interesting here, so certainly if you can put in a decent lineup, you have an okay shot there. But still, not a lot of payouts, so those kind of whales, the guys that have really lineups, competitive lineups that can go into all of these, they're going to take a lot of these, really minuscule spots, these 3 spots here, the top 10s, 11, 15 here and stuff like that. But you might be able to get into some of these back-end payouts or just put in a good lineup here, grab some Ethereum bonus and be okay with that. Looking down here at the limited cards, kind of similar. I mean, the payouts are maybe a little bit better, somewhat in line with what we saw in previous weekends, which is kind of nice. But overall, there's a lot of people playing. I'm kind of surprised whether they have full lineups in this. So whatever you can put together, throw something in here because, like I said, the percentages seem pretty high, and it's possible that a lot of these lineups are actually only playing maybe 3 playable cards or 4 or something like that. So anyways, good luck with it. There's not too much else on that. But the other thing I wanted to touch on, I alluded to it last video, is that I want to, now that we're kind of maybe around 2.5 months into kind of regular football across the world, I felt like I wanted to really compare how points are going across game week. So what I did was I looked at basically weekends only, because midweek it's kind of all over the place, and specifically the last 8, except I removed game week 198 where the international break was. So you can reasonably assume that most clubs across the world, or at least in each of these game weeks, had most of their teams playing across these. So I plotted them all out. You can see the different points that were required to win each of the different levels of cards, and then just averaged it out. So first, let's look at that. Not surprisingly, we've been talking about this. Champion Europe is the most, on average here, is the most competitive. You need roughly 330 points to get a card. The others seem to hover sort of around that kind of, U23 is just slightly lower at 310. It used to be a lot lower. We've really missed or passed that opportunity where you could really score some good cards with 250 points or something like that. Now it's kind of right up there, just a few points less than the other leagues as well. And if we look into like Div 3, you can see that really, I mean, you're approaching, again, in Europe, nearly 400 points and well into the 350s for the others. Special weekly, because it changes week to week, it's hard to really average this out, but it is at least promising to see that, each week there are some quite a range of points, and so if you can kind of just be opportunistic on some of them, you might find yourself in the winning circle. So I looked a bit at standard deviations. So this is just a little bit of a look at how much these numbers kind of vary. Quite small amount of deviation. Really, Champion Europe had a little bit. This might be due because early game weeks 190 and stuff like that were maybe a little bit lower, just as those leagues were just starting to kick off. So I think if we remove these 2 game weeks, you'd actually see it down into these numbers. Pretty much the rest of it pretty steady. Champion Asia just really the most sort of consistent week to week, and maybe Champion America slightly different. With the South American leagues and the MLS, they do sometimes have weekends where there's less teams playing and stuff like that. So a little bit more variation here was to be expected. And then, of course, Special Weekly has very high variation because, again, the parameters around them change week to week. So, we'd expect that. And then this tells us really much of the same, just in more of a graphical form. So just looking at the scores, the points you needed across a game week. So again, I mean, just really flat. The guys at Sorare seem to have figured out the thresholds. They're smarter than all of us, I suppose, and they kind of know roughly where to set the payouts at to reach a certain point threshold time and time again. So having said that, Champion Europe again seems to be the highest, and definitely had some peaks, some game weeks, and even dropped off here and there. This might be inverted, by the way, or it may need to be flipped, because if we look, that actually I started from the most recent all the way. So if I had flipped these the other way around, you'd probably see this flipped around. Regardless, we see that special weeklies obviously the most volatile. Not too surprising there. So there you have it. Hope that made sense. Kind of interesting. I'll take a look at the limited cards at some point once we have a few more weeks under our belt of those, and we'll just kind of keep chipping away and seeing what we can unearth. Thanks for listening.